Good morning and welcome back to CompSci.rocks and our series of solution videos for AP Computer Science free response questions. This time we're going to take a look at the member info question from the 2021 exam. When you sit for your AP Computer Science exam, it's very likely you'll see at least one question where you'll be asked to work with a novel class that you've never seen before, often in the context of an array or array list of references of that class. The member information free response question has you doing that with a class called MemberInfo, which is then used in two methods inside a ClubMember class that you'll implement. For this question, I think the easiest way to picture what it's asking is to imagine a database that holds information about students at a high school. Each student is a single member info reference. We need a way to add new members to the list as freshmen come into the school at the beginning of the year, and we need a way to remove seniors as they graduate. That's the two methods that you'll be implementing. Let's start by looking at the member info class. Everything you need to know about this class is given to you. Notice the methods aren't actually implemented, which doesn't really matter. It's okay for us to treat this class like a black box. We know what it does, but don't have to care how it does it. What's important here is that a constructor is defined and they give us the order of expected parameters. That's going to be important in part A. And each member has two methods, getGradYear and inGoodStanding, that we'll use in part B. And then this is a shell of the ClubMembers class that we're given as part of the problem, and there are two parts to implement. Part A takes a string array of names and creates a new member info references in the members array list. And Part B removes members that graduate in a specific year, keeping track of ones that graduate in good standing. So let's start with Part A. It's a void method, so we don't have anything to return. What we'll be doing is adding to the members instance variable. And we're given a string array of names and a graduation year. The problem description tells us that all students start in good standing, which will come back and be important in just a bit. First thing to work out is that we need to loop through all the strings in name. For now, I'm going to use a standard for loop because that tends to be the one most students are familiar with. The important thing is that we go through the entire array and look at every name. Next, we need to create a new member info reference based on what we know. We know the name of the new member from the array element that we get inside the loop. We know the graduation year from the parameter given to us, and we know that every student starts out in good standing, so the last parameter value is always true. One of the things that College Board is looking for here is that you understand the array list members is not just an array list of string names. It's an array list of member info references, and each member info has a string in it representing the name, among a couple other things. Once that reference is created, it can be added to the members array list. We could shorten it a bit and not create the member variable first and just put the instantiation call as a parameter for the add method. You'll end up with the same result and there's less to write. And we could write even less code and use a for each loop to iterate through the names array instead. Since we want to look at every value in the array and don't really care where we are in the array at any one time, a for each loop works great here. Now that we've written the method to add the freshmen to our list of students, it's time to implement a method to removing graduating seniors. This time we have two things to do though. One, we need to remove those that graduated in the year given, but we also need to keep track of students that graduated in good standing and return that list. I guess if we want to continue thinking of this like a senior class, we want to remove everybody from the school roster, but also need to create a list of those students that get to walk at graduation. And since we need to return an array list, I went ahead and did that first. I also returned it at the end. Normally when I'm working through problems where there's a return value, I'll do it this way so I don't forget the return at the end. And now we need to loop through the array list of existing members to decide who to remove. Notice that I'm going backwards here. Generally, when I may be removing items from an array list, I prefer to go backwards through the list. This makes it easier to not skip values as you remove items. We've got a video explaining that in a little more detail linked in the video description below, or in a card popping up on the top of the video if you need a bit more of an explanation. Then I'm going to pull the current member info object out of the list and store it in a variable. I'm doing this because we're going to be calling methods on this, and I didn't want to keep writing members.getI over and over again. Once we have a member we can look at, we see if they graduated in the year that we're looking for. College Board is checking here that you understand the items in the array list members are member info references and you're able to call methods defined in member info on those objects you're pulling out of the list. That's why member.getGradYear works. And they're also checking that you understand the graduation year is part of the member but not the entire member. The member is composed of a graduation year, name, and standing. It's not those things individually. Assuming that the current member is set to graduate in the year we're looking for, we remove them from the members list. But we're not quite done yet. We also need to see if they're in good standing. We do that with a nested if statement, again calling a method on the member object from the list. And if they're in good standing, they get added to the removed array list that's returned at the end. Quick note here, instead of just adding the member to the end of the removed list, I used an overloaded version of the add method to insert the member at the beginning of the list. I did this so that the member info objects in removed are in the same order as they were in instance variable members that we're going through backwards. The problem didn't say anything about the order of the returned array list, and the example given only had one member returned, so you probably didn't have to do it this way. I just did because it kind of felt like the right thing to do, and there have been free responses in the past where this was an issue. And thanks for stopping by and working through another free response question with me, and I'll see you next time.